Hey everyone, Barry Smith here again. I wanted to continue talking about IP addresses, specifically public IP addresses, private IP addresses, and I also want to talk a little bit about subnet masks. I didn't go over that subnet mask when I was talking about the classes in the last video, so I wanted to kind of get a little bit more detail in that. So first of all, let's talk about public and private IPs, and let me kind of explain how this works. A public IP address is an IP address that you will find on the internet. Now the word on the internet, or words on the internet, is really important because when something's on the internet, that means it's directly connected to the internet. When you're on the internet, you must have a public IP address, which means that IP address is unique all over the world. No two people have the same IP address anywhere in the world. They have to be unique. Same as with the phone number analogy that I used earlier and used before in another video. So the number must be a unique number, and we call that a public number because it's public. It's everybody can see it. Everybody knows what that number is. It's a public number. On the opposite side of that is what's called private IP addresses, and a private IP address is the exact opposite. A private IP address is not on the internet. It cannot be on the internet because they are set aside for the specific use to work in what's called a private network, which would be like your home network or a corporate network. So, they're not on the internet. Now, the reasoning behind this and the reasoning why you have this, again, forgive me for another small little history lesson here, but this does really explain it quite well. In the earlier video when I talked to you about IP addresses, I told you that we as individuals were never meant to be on the internet. The internet, as it was designed and the way IP addresses were designed, they were designed to be for schools, governments, and business. They were never designed for individuals. So in 1992, that's when the internet as we know it today was actually created. It was opened up to the public, and then we as individuals were able to get on the internet. Well, the problem is that with the way that IP address scheme works and with the way IP version 4 works, there are only so many IP addresses to go around. And again, if you have to have a unique IP address all over the world, that means that everywhere else in the world they have to have a unique IP address as well. So we were quickly running out of IP addresses as individuals were getting on the internet. So what happened is they set aside some IPs, they set aside some numbers, and they said, you know what, we're going to make these numbers what we call private numbers. And those private numbers, network administrators will be able to use these numbers in any way they see fit. They can assign them however they want. They can use them however they want to use them. They don't have to ask permission. They don't have to pay for them. Nothing. But the trade-off is that these private IP addresses, they can't use these addresses on the internet. They must use a public address. So what happened is they set aside these numbers, and that allowed us to actually extend or expand the use of IP addressing by being able to use private IP addresses within our business or within our home, and then translate those into a public IP address when you try to get on the internet. And this is how most networks actually work today. Now what I want to show you and what I want to tell you, because this is very important, this will be on certifications. This is all the way your A+ certification, your Net+ certification, Security+ certification, Cisco certification, and even a little bit in Microsoft. This information that I'm about to tell you right now is actually on those certification tests. So this is very important stuff, and it's good basic fundamental information that you really need to know about IP addresses. So what I'm going to tell you right now, you already know the ranges of IPs, Class A, Class B, and Class C. You already know what makes those. So what I'm going to tell you now is I'm going to tell you the private ranges, what IP addresses have been set aside for private use. I can tell you that there is a range in Class A, Class B, and Class C, one range in each. So what this allows you to do is this allows you, if you remember, Class A was for large networks, B was for medium networks, and C was for small networks. This allows you to use the one that you need. If you need something small, go with Class C. If you need something really large, you can go with Class A. The beautiful thing is the IPs I'm about to tell you, you don't have to ask anybody's permission. You just use them as you see fit. It's wonderful. So in the class A, anything that starts with the number 10 is a private address. So 10.0.0.0, can't even write here, all the way to 10.255.255.255, and everything in between is private. So in other words, if you ever see an IP address that starts with 10, it's a private address, period. In the world of Class B, there's actually a range of numbers, 172.16.0.0 all the way to 172.31.255.255, and everything in between. So 172.17, 172.18, and so on, all the way to 172.31. Anything in this range is a private address. Again, not on the internet. With Class C, it is 192.168.0.0 all the way to 192.168.255.255, and everything in between. So 192.168.1, 192.168.2, and so on and so on. Anything in there is private, not on the internet. So if you ever come across one of these IP addresses, you're not on the internet. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, now wait a minute, yes I am. I can get on Facebook, I can get on Google, I can look up my email. What you have, it's a technicality, but it is different. You have internet access, which means that somewhere on your network is a router, which a router is a device that connects two different networks together. Somewhere on your network is a router that is connecting your private network to a public network that goes on the internet. So you are not, quote unquote, on the internet, but you have internet access. Again, a small technicality, but a technicality all the same. And you can get people on that too. You can ask them, hey, are you on the internet? If they have one of these IP addresses, they're not on the internet. They might have internet access, but they're not on the internet. So keep a lookout for that. Memorize these numbers. These numbers are very important. I'm telling you, they will be in every certification test. Pretty much, if it's got networking, they're there because they're really, really important. So this is your private IPs, not on the internet, which means all the other IPs besides these are on the internet, which we would call them public. Now, let me get this going and let me talk a little bit about subnet masks. And what a subnet mask is, what it means, why you have it, what's the purpose, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so let me give you an IP address. Let's say that we have an IP address of 192.168.1.1. Let's say that's our IP address, and we should know by now that that's a Class C IP address, and it's one of those private ones that I just told you about. Now, when someone gives you an IP address, if they don't give you the subnet mask, they've really only given you half of the information that you need. You can't do much of anything with this alone. You must have the subnet mask that goes along with it, because in reality they work as a pair, they work together, and one really can't work without the other. So until I give you the subnet mask, you really can't tell me a whole lot about this IP address. So if I tell you that the subnet mask is 255.255.255.0, which is a standard Class C subnet mask, now I've given you the whole story. I've given you all the information you need. Now again, what does that mean? I know you're thinking, well, so what? You give me these numbers. What does that mean? Well, the subnet mask, the whole point of the subnet mask is to identify the numbers above it and to identify which numbers represent the network and which numbers represent the node. Wherever you see the 255s, the numbers above that means that that number is part of the network. Because remember, ones in the subnet mask, ones represent networks. And when I say ones, remember you have to convert this to binary. Computers and everything really only understand binary, so when I convert this to binary, that's 8 ones, 8 ones, 8 ones, and 8 zeros. Wherever you see the ones in the subnet mask, that number above that means it's part of the network. And the subnet mask actually tells all network devices, network cards, routers, any device that cares to listen, it tells that device, these numbers represent the network, this number represents the node or the host, and that's it. That's what the subnet mask does. Now, when you talk about standard subnet masks, when you have a Class A, Class B, or Class C IP address, there are subnet masks that goes along with those IP addresses. As you see here, this is what we call a standard Class C subnet mask. Default, standard, it just goes right with the Class C, nothing special. Class B would be 255.255.0.0. That would be Class B. And Class A is 255.0.0.0. And if you think about it, these numbers here, the 255s and the zeros, they correspond perfectly with, if you remember the other video, on a Class A, the first octet represented the network and the last three represented the node. Class B, the first two represented the network and the last two represented the node. And in Class C, the first three have the network and the last one has the node. So it's perfect. This kind of hammers home what I was saying. Wherever you see the 255s, wherever you have the ones, the quote-unquote ones in the subnet mask, that tells you this is the network part, this is the network ID, and then this is the node ID. So 255s for network, zeros for node. So that should do it. Public IPs, private IPs, public on the internet, private are not on the internet, but they could have internet access. Don't forget those private ranges that I just showed you. And subnet masks, the whole point of the subnet mask is to tell you what part of the IP address is the network part and what part is the node or host part. And also remember, you can't have one without the other. They must go together. That's it for this lesson. Have a good day.